Mr. Short, how would you describe the province's debt?
It's the worst in the country. It continues to be a problem, and it's something that hasn't been addressed by any of the provincial parties in this election. Primarily, what we're hearing about is spending and not programs to actually conquer the biggest single problem we have.
Is this an accurate representation of what's happening with our debt? Is it just still piling up and up?
It is continuing to pile up. It's been getting worse for many years. In this particular case, there is something constructive being built, but unfortunately, unless we find some way to address it, it's going to be to our detriment.
Years and years, how far does this go back?
We were actually reducing debt in 2008, 9, going into 2010, and then the budgets in 2011 and 12, we started to reverse that. So even though we had $8 billion plus coming in as revenue, we were actually spending more. So our deficit has started to get worse in 2011-12, and then since the price of oil has dropped so significantly, our revenue figures dropped, and that's when debt has really taken off.
And how do we compare to other provinces or other jurisdictions?
Far worse than other provinces. We spend more, so our government costs us more per person than any other province. Our total debt is the worst in the country by far.
Why should people care about this?
Out of the total $8 billion that we spend in a run of a year, roughly 1.3 billion is being spent on interest alone. And as our debt continues to rise, that interest figure will continue to rise. I mean, there's lots we could be spending money on besides interest if we could.
So what needs to happen? How do we get out of this? What should the people of the province be looking for in the next government?
Yeah, we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We just have to look at other jurisdictions around the world that have been faced with similar problems. One of the areas that we heard of for many years was the Celtic Tiger, which was Ireland, that did tremendous right up until 2008 and then got into severe problems, and by 2010 their unemployment rate went up to 15%. They, with no oil, managed to turn it around. Their unemployment rate is now down to 5%, and they're leading the growth in Europe. Similarly, in Saskatchewan in 1993, they faced almost the exact same problem that we're facing now. They took some harsh measures because they had to. They hit the wall. They hit the point where they could no longer borrow because no one would lend to them. And that's what we could face if we don't address this properly. And now their net debt is well below what the province of Newfoundland's stats are. The key part here is that if we plan ahead of time, we don't necessarily have to go through such extreme harshness, but there's no discussion of a plan to actually address the debt.